Hello everyone, my name is Protesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video I want to talk to you about a philosophical theme for which I have not prepared any kind of text. So I will just talk to you and go with the flow. What I have here, just a brief introduction, is just the new recording setup I have. This is the GNOME desktop environment on GNU/Linux. And I just have the recording software over here, and this other frame is Emacs, and I will just type something there. So just a very basic setup. I just need to make sure that it is working, so I will dismiss this as well. So the topic for today is based on a question that I received yesterday. Yesterday I did a video about perfectionism. Let me write it: perfectionism, insecurity, and improvisation. So please watch that video, by the way, because I also comment on my creative process, which also informs this video. And in that video, related to that video, I received a question which I will just paraphrase now, and it was along the lines of please make up your mind, please decide, are you a philosopher or a psychologist? Psychologist. What are you really? Are you a philosopher or a psychologist? Make up your mind, we need to know. The answer to this question is very simple. I am a philosopher. However, because I am a philosopher, exactly because I am a philosopher, I cannot afford to let such a question go without scrutiny. I have to examine it. I have to comment on it. I have to render conspicuous the set of beliefs that are underpinning it. Because by bringing those beliefs to the foreground, by making them clear, we can make some conclusions. We can improve our conduct. We can improve how we think and how we behave. So let's see what we do. Philosopher or psychologist? This is a dichotomy. This is a view of the world that sees an indelible line crossing through those fields of expertise. And this line establishes a border, sets up a wall that we cannot cross. We cannot circumvent that border, that wall. We cannot climb over it. So either you are on this side or on that side. There is no in between. This is a binary. This is a binary that does not allow, does not tolerate any kind of middle ground. A binary that forces us to think in terms of absolutes, that forces us to consider that there is no spectrum, there are no permutations between those extremes. Is this the case, though? Is it indeed the case that there is no spectrum, that there can be no philosopher who psychologizes or psychologist who philosophizes? Is there no point of intersection between those two disciplines? Is there nothing to be said that takes elements from both? I think not. I think there is a spectrum. I think there is an in-between and many in-betweens. There is a permutation and many permutations, perhaps infinite, between those extremes. I understand why this dichotomy is established. Because naturally, as humans, we are animals that have the capacity to draw abstractions by observing patterns. We observe a pattern in the cosmos, and in our mind, we render it as a construct that has a standalone presence. And this is the exercise of an analysis. Analysis is exactly this: the abstraction from the world and the rendering of that presence, that pattern, as a construct of our mind, as a noetic construct. Let me write it here, noetic. So pertaining to thought. Pertaining to thought. So we do this with everything. We do this with concepts as well, because we observe the structure between various concepts and we derive a greater abstraction. So we develop taxonomies and we develop an abstract structure of how everything fits in place. This is all very helpful, of course. This is how we survive in the world. And this is how we do science. This is how we do cooking. This is how we operate in our life in general. There is nothing wrong with abstracting from the world. There is nothing wrong with analytics, with performing an analysis. However, we have to be mindful of our condition. We have to understand that what is in our mind, what exists in this neat and controlled environment, is an in vitro representation of something that exists in the totality of presences, in the totality of experiences, in the cosmos. So the in vitro is not the same as the in vivo. It is not the same as what exists in actuality. There is a distinction to be made, and we need to be careful not to conflate the noetic representation, this thing we have in our mind, with what is out there. Of course, what is out there is not always clear. That's why we do science, that's why we have philosophy, and we have to ask the relevant questions. What is out there? How do I know? Why do I know? Etc. So I'm not saying that this is an easy kind of problematic. I'm just saying that conceptually we can understand that there is a distinction to be made. And by avoiding this conflation between the in vitro and the in vivo, we will think twice before introducing dichotomies everywhere. Because we must understand that human knowledge exists on a continuum, just as the totality of the world is a continuum. The totality does not have real borders here and there. Borders are a human construction, in politics as well, but also in other compartments that we have. We have this propensity for compartmentalization. We have this propensity to draw a clear niche for everything. You fit into this box, you fit into that box, you fit into this other one. You cannot exist fluidly. You cannot exist on a spectrum indeterminately. We need to put you somewhere. We need to have you in place. We need to be more careful with this, because many things do not withstand, do not tolerate this kind of exercise in specificity, this kind of insistence on this boxing that I just described, this attempt to clearly delineate a space where we put something and to hold that space for it, to force it to stay there so that it can never be anything else. It can never really evolve or be in a certain interplay with something else. This compartmentalization is again understandable because it links back to this capacity we have for abstraction. However, it also has to do with how the modern world is, where we have a field of expertise for everything, and that's good. It is good to have specializations, and it is good to have all those disciplines in science and in general. All those disciplines that focus on a certain topic and go in depth to understand that topic in its particularities. That's perfectly fine. The concern, however, what we need to remember, however, is that we need to bring those findings back to the continuum. We need to be able to draw linkages between the various disciplines so that we don't have just a discipline, but we have multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, in order to understand things synthetically, holistically, in order to be able to bring together different views and to blend those views and to have a rounded understanding of what it is that we are talking about, of what it is that we are studying, researching, considering, working towards. I am a philosopher. I am not a psychologist. I am a philosopher. I am not a political analyst. I am a philosopher. I am not a programmer. I am a philosopher. I am not a baker. I am a philosopher. I am not a dog trainer. And so on for everything else that I do. If you want to have binaries, if you want to have those dichotomies, like you have to be one or the other. The problem then is that when you encounter the reality of me being something and something else, you have a problem. You have the problem, the very real problem of challenging your own propensity for compartmentalization. You need to consider that those compartments, those borders that you are drawing everywhere, are just in your mind. In reality, there is a continuum. There are no borders. It is a border-free world. The borders are for maps. The borders, for better or worse, exist on maps, yes. And they are useful in practical terms when we have specializations and so on. But even within specialists, among specialists rather, we need to be able to establish bridges and to cross those borders. Because if no one crosses any kind of border, we are doomed. Because no one will talk to each other anymore, and we will not have any kind of understanding of what it is that we are doing. So we need to be more considerate with this. We need to tear down the borders. So that's about it, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. A final point about this crossing the borders, because I have Emacs open over here. I am a philosopher, as I said. I started using Emacs 3 years ago. I switched to Emacs in the summer of 2019. I didn't know any kind of programming in Emacs Lisp. I had a very basic understanding of shell scripting. That's all I knew. So all those parentheses that we see in Lisp were extremely difficult to understand. It was very, very difficult for me. Fast forward to the present, and I maintain, I don't know, I forget the number now, 10 packages maybe for Emacs. I have written thousands of lines of code in Emacs Lisp. Some of my code exists, it is built into Emacs. It is available in Emacs Git, so you can find it there, some of my code. And of course, I continue contributing. This is not just a matter of the past. This is an ongoing process. Earlier today, before doing this video, I made an announcement about an extension to one of my packages for Emacs, specifically the themes, one of the themes that I'm using here. I am a living example of this falsehood that is the dichotomy. I am both a programmer and a philosopher. I am showing in practice that a philosopher can be in the company of programmers and not look like an alien. In the same way that a programmer can be in the company of philosophers and not look like a complete stranger to that milieu. I crossed the border because there was no border for me. When I joined the Emacs milieu, I wasn't thinking that now I am entering the domain of some expert programmer. This is a tribe of specialists, engineers or whatever, who will not tolerate my existence, and I better shut my mouth and keep quiet and keep low. No, I didn't think of it that way. And the others who welcomed me in this milieu didn't think about it that way either. We understand that there is a continuum. We understand that this notion of the domain, this border, is just in our mind. It may be useful in some ways, but in other ways it is detrimental to what we are doing. It is counterproductive. It inhibits our progress. It holds us back. It holds us hostage to certain obsessions that we have, to certain obstinacies that we have. By crossing this ostensible border and by showing in practice that I can be a philosopher and a programmer, a philosopher in the midst of expert programmers, of world-class programmers. Emacs is a highly advanced piece of software that lots of experts use. And I don't think that I am a lesser user by joining this community. I don't think that I am manqué, lacking in any kind of regard because I don't have a formal qualification as a programmer. I know that I am not good as them in lots of aspects of programming. I never claimed otherwise. However, I know that this is a continuum, so I am somewhere on the spectrum between programmer and philosopher. So that's perfectly fine with me. I don't need to be full programmer or full philosopher. And the same for all fields of endeavor, in my life and in everybody's life. So please consider the implications of this sort of question. Please consider how far it goes. What are the ramifications? What kind of world do we have when everything has to be formulated as a binary? Is it a world you want to live in? I don't. Thank you very much for your attention, folks. Goodbye. So I need to bring up this and just close it. So, goodbye. Have a nice day.